Welcome to Sleepy Night Stories. I am your host, Mr. Vandam. It is an absolute privilege to have you back with me tonight. Before we wade into the dark, humid, and terrifying history of tonight's mystery, I need you to take a moment to prepare yourself. Go ahead and grab your favorite snacks, pour yourself a tall, fresh, cold drink, and find the absolute most comfortable position in your bed. Pull the heavy blanket up to your chin. Let the muscles in your neck relax. Listen closely to the sound of my voice and let yourself drift off to a deep, dreamless sleep, if you can. If you are a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious, delivered in a story format, then you have found your permanent home, because that is exactly what we do here. Before we head to the scene, if you enjoy our content, please invite the like button over for a private music concert. Tell them you have hired a world-class jazz band to play in their living room. But when they sit down on the couch, hand them a rusty, broken kazoo, turn off all the lights, and quietly lock the door from the outside. Now, let us get into today's story. Imagine a monster that does not hide in the woods or wait for you in a dark alleyway. Imagine a phantom that walks right up to your home while you are fast asleep, bypasses all of your locked doors, and enters your bedroom. But this monster does not want your money. He does not want your jewelry. And terrifyingly, he does not even bring his own weapon. He uses the tools from your own backyard to destroy you. And then, imagine that this same monster writes a letter to your city, claiming to be a demon straight from hell, holding hundreds of thousands of people hostage, demanding only one thing: that you play music for him. To understand this bizarre, incredibly dark chapter of American history, we have to travel back in time to the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. The year is 1918. If you have never been to New Orleans, you need to understand its atmosphere. It is a city built on a swamp. The air is always thick, heavy, and dripping with humidity. It is a beautiful, deeply cultural city, famous for its incredible food, its blending of cultures, and most notably for being the absolute birthplace of jazz music. In 1918, the streets were alive with the sound of brass instruments, pianos, and the bustling energy of immigrant communities. But beneath the lively surface, in the humid, dark nights of the city, a profound terror was about to take root. Our story begins in the early morning hours of May 23, 1918. Joseph and Catherine Maggio were Italian immigrants who ran a small grocery store and lived in the apartment right connected to it. They were hard-working, quiet people who had spent the day running their shop, counting their modest earnings, and going to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, a shadow moved into their backyard. The intruder did not pick the lock on the heavy wooden back door. He did not break the glass window, because breaking glass makes a loud, shattering noise that wakes people up. Instead, this phantom did something incredibly strange, meticulous, and chilling. He took a wood chisel and very quietly, very patiently, chipped away at the solid wooden panel at the very bottom of the back door. He chipped and carved until he could pop the entire square panel out of the door frame in one piece. Then, this intruder simply crawled through the small hole at the bottom of the door, slithering into the house like a snake. Once inside, the intruder did not pull out a gun or a knife. He walked through the dark house, found Joseph Maggio's own heavy iron axe that was kept for chopping firewood, and walked into the bedroom. The attack was swift, silent, and incredibly brutal. He attacked Joseph and Catherine in their bed, and then he did something that completely broke the logic of a normal home invasion. The killer walked into the next room, dropped the bloody axe on the floor, and simply crawled back out the hole in the door. When the police arrived the next morning, they were completely baffled. Joseph and Catherine's life savings were sitting right there in the room. The cash register in the grocery store was completely untouched. Valuable jewelry was left resting on the nightstand. The killer had walked past a fortune in cash and valuables, taken nothing, and left. The police assumed it was a targeted hit. Perhaps the Maggios had an enemy. The city read about it in the morning papers, shuddered, and moved on. But then it happened again. A month later, a man named Louis Bassumer and his partner Harriet Lowe were asleep in their home, which also happened to be attached to a grocery store. In the dead of night, the phantom struck. The method was exactly the same. The bottom panel of the wooden back door was meticulously chiseled out. The killer crawled inside, found a hatchet belonging to Louis, and attacked them in their sleep. Again, large amounts of money and valuables were left completely untouched. Panic began to spread, like a wildfire, through the heavy, humid air of New Orleans. The newspapers dubbed the phantom the Axeman. The horror of the Axeman was psychological. He broke the fundamental rule of safety. When you lock your door at night, you feel safe. But the Axeman did not care about your locks. He literally dismantled your door while you slept just a few feet away. Furthermore, the fact that he did not bring a weapon meant you could not catch him walking down the street looking suspicious. He looked like an ordinary citizen. He relied on the terrifying irony of using a family's own household tools to end their lives. Throughout the summer and fall of 1918, the attacks continued. A pregnant woman named Mary Muiro was attacked. An elderly man named Joseph Romano was attacked. Every single time, the bottom panel of the door was chiseled out. Every single time, the victim's own axe was used. Every single time, the money was left on the table. The entire city of New Orleans was paralyzed by fear. Men stopped going to work, choosing instead to stay awake all night, sitting in their living rooms with loaded shotguns aimed at their back doors. Families nailed thick wooden planks over the bottoms of their doors. The police were completely overwhelmed, chasing shadows and arresting innocent people out of pure desperation. But the police had no fingerprints. They had no witnesses who could agree on a description. Some said he was a tall, heavy-set white man. Some said he was a small, agile man. He was a ghost. Winter came, and the attacks mysteriously stopped. The city breathed a collective sigh of relief, hoping the Axeman had died, moved away, or been arrested for another crime. But on March 10th, 1919, the phantom returned with a vengeance, attacking a family in the nearby town of Gretna, just across the river. The nightmare had resumed. And then, 3 days later, on March 13th, 1919, the logic of the case completely shattered, shifting from a terrifying murder mystery into something deeply surreal and culturally bizarre. The editor of the local newspaper, the Times-Picayune, received a letter in the mail. It was a chilling, perfectly typed letter that was addressed to the citizens of New Orleans. The letter began with words that would cement this story into history forever. Hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me, and they never will. D. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit, and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. The letter went on to mock the police, calling them utterly incompetent. He claimed that he could walk right through walls, and that he wore the darkest shadows as his cloak. But it was the second half of the letter that broke the minds of the people reading it. The Axeman laid down a massive, city-wide ultimatum. He wrote, "Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am. But I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens. But I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. The deadline was set. Tuesday night, March 19th, 1919, at exactly 12:15 in the morning. Play jazz music, or die. Try to put yourself in the shoes of a citizen of New Orleans at that exact moment. You are already terrified. You have nailed your doors shut. You are sleeping with a weapon. And now, a confirmed, brutal serial killer is claiming to be a demon, holding a population of nearly 400,000 people hostage, demanding that they play a specific genre of music. You cannot ignore it. You cannot risk it. If you do not play the music and he breaks through your door, you are dead. When the sun went down on Tuesday, March 19th, the atmosphere in New Orleans was unlike anything witnessed in human history. As midnight approached, the city did not go quiet. Instead, it erupted. Every single dance hall, every jazz club, and every bar in the city was packed, shoulder to shoulder, with terrified people. Professional jazz bands were hired by wealthy citizens to play in their massive living rooms. For those who could not afford a band, they pushed their pianos to the open windows and played them as loudly as their fingers would allow. Families who did not know how to play instruments cranked their phonographs to maximum volume, playing jazz records on a continuous loop. Even people who had absolutely nothing grabbed pots, pans, and empty glass bottles, banging them together in a desperate, frantic rhythm. The humid, heavy night air of New Orleans was filled with a massive, chaotic, and terrifying symphony of brass, piano, and drums. It sounded like a massive celebration, but it was not. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Hundreds of thousands of people sitting in their homes, sweating in the heat, watching their back doors, playing jazz music to appease a demon. Imagine the psychological tension. You are playing a lively, upbeat trumpet tune, but your eyes are locked on the wooden panel at the bottom of your kitchen door, waiting to hear the slow, scraping sound of a wood chisel. 12:15 came and went. The music did not stop. It played until the sun finally rose on Wednesday morning, casting its light over a completely exhausted, traumatized city. No one was attacked that night. Not a single door was chiseled. Not a single axe was lifted. The Axeman had kept his word. The killer struck a few more times later that year, in August and October, targeting people who had thought the nightmare was finally over. And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the Axeman of New Orleans simply vanished. He stopped killing. He stopped writing letters. He disappeared into the thick, humid fog of the Louisiana swamp. To this day, over a century later, the identity of the Axeman has never been discovered. No one knows if he was a disgruntled local, a traveling phantom, or, as he claimed, a demon who just happened to love the brassy, soulful sound of New Orleans jazz. It remains one of the most culturally bizarre and terrifying unsolved mysteries in American history. A killer who bypassed all logic, ignored money, and forced an entire metropolis to dance for its life. Thank you for listening tonight. If you hear a sudden, sharp scraping sound coming from the bottom of your door tonight, do not bother looking for a weapon. Just put on your favorite record, turn the volume all the way up, and sleep if you can. Good night.